Alright then. Alright, so welcome back to the channel. This one's a bit of a continuation from that previous Venture Electronics care package video that I recently released. This is that one final item we didn't get to look at, but I figured this one deserved its own video, considering it appeals to a slightly more different demographic. We're still looking at portable items here, we're still looking at budget fi options. But instead of looking at chi-fi, we're looking at American tech. Well, I suppose, anyway. We are looking at the COS Porta Pros, KSC75Xs, etc. But we're going to be modifying them a bit here. So part of what I got in that care package were these pads that you see right in front of you. These are Venture Electronics' own take on COS aftermarket pads. These are the stock Porta Pro pads. They're very thin, very, very thin, and they're just, they stretch. They stretch. These are the stock KSC75X pads. They're definitely much thicker than the Porta Pro pads, but they're still kind of small, which in my opinion is a good thing, but maybe some people want something a little different. So let's take a look at the options here, because these aren't just an alternative to Yaxi Pads. These actually have their own little twist to them here. They're not the same thing. So there are 4 types of pads that we're going to be taking a look here generally. So let's start off with these just because they're quick to knock off the list. They're pad pair number 1. These are tiny, very, very tiny, circular, and they're very not spherical. They are in fact squared off at the edges. They're edgy. They're not round as opposed to the more traditional foamy look of the Porta Pro designs that we've seen. Now here's the issue though. Do you see this entry right here? It is too small. I cannot fit either the Porta Pros or the KSC75Xs in here. And I know what you're thinking, well, what about those other ones? The ones that came with the retrospect headband? No, I tried those too. They don't fit in there. Those are too thick. The driver itself is too thick to fit in there. So it is what it is. Thank you very much for sending that anyway. Now let's take a look at pad pair number 2. These, and you'll see I've got them in here. By the way, right off the bat, just so no one's confused here, do you see this plug right here? These are on the Porta Pro headband, but they're not Porta Pros. They are KSC75Xs because, surprise, surprise, I like the KSC75Xs, the drivers, but I like Porta Pros, the design. So just for proof here, these are the KSC75Xs, and these are the COS Porta Pros. And you can see the jack, that is the Porta Pro jack. So I'm going to start off right off the bat with these here. They're small circular donut pads that expose the driver. So you see this hole right there? The driver's exposed. There's a hole the same size on the back of these so that you can fit the driver in. So they're straight up just donuts. Small little donuts that are definitely smaller than something like this. The more traditional aftermarket pads. And you know what? That's actually a really good thing because guess what? These do great in terms of comfort and in terms of sound. I'm actually impressed here with both the KSC75Xs and the Porta Pros when applying these. I wasn't expecting a massive change to be brought about by these just because they're closer in size to the stock pads than they are to the aftermarket pads. Now here's the thing. On the 75Xs, it brings a tiny extra little bit of sizzle to the high end. It's still not bright, but there's definitely a little extra there. It's definitely a welcome adjustment. Now that low end either remains the same or is brought forward a little. But here's the thing. Wow, the amount of improvement here is it's undeniable. It's far more refined. It transitions from being less of a thump and more of a slap. So to put that a little more, complex, like audiophile-ish, it transitions the hump, the emphasis of where the bass is, from the mid bass to a little closer to the sub bass, just a bit. Now we experience a very similar effect on the Porta Pros. On the Porta Pros, the low end remains equally as forward, but definitely experiences a clarity bump that makes it far more refined than ever before. The high end gets slightly crispier, slightly more forward, but definitely more clear and discernible. Also a very slight amount of extra soundstage. The bass is still a tad too meaty for me though. Just, again, I can listen to it. If I had no other choice, I would listen to these and I'd be fine. I did so for quite some time back when I got the Porta Pros. But yeah, you get the point. Now let's proceed to pad pair number 3. So these are very, they're different. They're square. You want to look like you own Marshall headphones? Here they are. These are the pads for you. They're interesting. They look interesting, and I figured, you know what, maybe these might be a little different. So, with the 75Xs, other than looks, these made very little difference in the sound. The treble stayed roughly the same, the mid stayed about the same as well, and the bass, if any difference at all, sounds a tad more solid than with the stock pads. With the Porta Pros, it's definitely more of an improvement here. The bass becomes a little more tame and a little more defined, which is very welcome in my book. The high end is a little clearer, but doesn't really step forward from stock either. Definitely also an improvement. Now, I'll be frank with you, I really didn't like these all that much. That extra thickness starts making these slide off of your ears a little more easily. That being said, these are much more of a yes for the Porta Pros than for the 75Xs, definitely. And now let's approach with pad pair number 4. So, take a look at these. I'm going to pull the red one here. For those who think these are just rebranded Yaxi Pads, you're wrong. I'll actually commend Venture Electronics here. So this in my right hand is a Yaxi pad. In my left, I've got the Venture Electronic pad. As you can see, these pads are slightly smaller in circumference. As you can see, the VE pads offer a smaller gap, which may guarantee their stability a little better. This is also a great feature since the smaller footprint makes them a tad less cumbersome on your head. Now the Yaxi pads are a tiny bit thicker than the Venture Electronic pads, just so you know. That extra width will impact the sound more, which can either be a good thing or a bad thing. So how do these VE pads sound? Yep. The changes I experience with the VE COS pads are exactly the same as with the Yaxi pads. Overall, a little change in sound. Meatier bass, slightly wider soundstage, and slightly laid back treble. It's an alright change, but it's still not my cup of tea. Now same thing with the Porta Pros. The bass might have improved a bit in texture, but it's still far too warm and forward. The treble really didn't experience any sort of improvement either. Nope. I'm gonna pass on these. Sorry, VE, but just not my cup of tea. If you're into Yaxi pads, you'll be into those. If you're not into Yaxi pads, well, there's your answer. And unfortunately, these also give me that discomfort issue I experience with the Yaxi pads. Their thickness just makes them slide off of my ears pretty easily, which it's annoying. It really gets annoying. So let's go ahead and end this quick one here. I would not get these for myself. I just don't like them. I don't know. These are okay. They're decent. I like them, but I don't think I'd go through the trouble of getting them. I think I'd rather just stick with the stock pads. These, however, and I'm gonna go Zeos for like 10 seconds. These are the ones. Listen, I can't quite explain why, but the fact that there's a gap here, like from the pad to the center, makes them stay on my ears far more easily. I guess just because the back of my ears fall into this groove somewhat a little more easily, like a little deeper, which makes them, stay on my ears a little more easily. Regardless of whether I'm using the Porta Pro headband or the Retrospect headband, whatever I'm using, it just works. Everything just works. And I love the difference in sound that it made with the KSC 75Xs. It's awesome. It made the bass just a tiny bit meatier, but also much more textured, much more impactful, in a good way though. If you recall, the 75Xs had great bass already, but it could have used a little extra power to it, just a little bit. And as far as the treble's concerned, it actually brought out the details a little bit, and it kind of removed the veil that the 75Xs might have had already. Again, they were very near perfection, but this definitely made them take the cake. Definitely did. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely keep using these. I'll see if I can order some blue and red ones, but these right here are the pads to go with. Definitely the ones to go with. Well, I did mention this was going to be a short video, so that's where we're going to end it. So, thank you very much for watching, and thanks for tuning in. I will see you in the next video. Okay, ciao.